How old are his kids?
So did you guys go out for things? Yep.
What's that? Thank you. Yeah, there's 101 years old. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know for sure if we're going to be short. Actual cemetery. So don't worry about it. If you could just you want to call it key back Okay, cool, thanks. Appreciate it. Sorry about that.
And he doesn't have the upper body.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Hello? Oh, hi. You're working with Doug? Yes. Then I'll do the ribbons after.
We're going to begin our service for military honors. Before we start with that, I wish wish you to make sure if you have a cell phone that's either turned off or on vibrate. I'm going to ask those who can rise for the military honors. If you have served or are currently serving in the military, you may perform the hand salute. Thank you.
He said if you don't have to stand if you can. He wants to.
You may be seated.
States, the United States Army, and a grateful nation. Please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service.
Gather here today to give our special thanks, our appreciation, our love for a very dear man. A person who dedicated his more than 100 years on this planet to be there for his friends, for his family, for his community, for his neighbors. A person who left a big mark in this world and made a big difference to a lot of people. He served his time as a very beloved brother, beloved father, beloved grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, and many other special titles. So here today we honor Mr. Phillip Roberts. We'll say some words, we'll say some prayers. It's for ourselves to have comfort and to have some strength from the hard times that we're going through. But it's also for our dear Phil, that he should hear the words, he should hear all the things that we noticed, all the things we appreciated, all the things that changed our lives. That was because of his hard work, his dedication, his love, and special service. We're going to start with a selection from the Psalms. We'll first say the familiar 23rd Psalm. We'll say it first in Hebrew, and then we'll say it in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo iksar, binais deshech yarbitzeni, al memenuchos yenachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavis, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamoni. Tairach lefanai shulchan neged sarai. Dishante v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya. Hachtov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai. V'shavti bebeis Adonai, la'orech yamim. A song of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the view of my torments. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long days. We also read Psalm 130. Shir hamalos mimamakim karasicha Adonai. Adonai shema v'koli tiyenezacha kashuvois lakol tachanunoi. Ima v'nos tishmarya Adonai miyamod ki imcha haslicha leman tiverei. Kivisi Adonai kivisa nafshi v'lid v'ro hochalti. Nashi la'Adonai mishamrim la'bayker yoshamrim la'bayker. Yachel Yisrael el Adonai ki im Adonai echesed v'harbei imo fedus. V'hu yifteis Yisrael mikol avonaisav. A song of ascents. From the depths I called you, O Lord. My Lord, hear my voice. May your ears be attentive to the sound of my pleas. If you preserve our mistakes, O God, my Lord, who could survive? For with you is forgiveness, that you should be feared. I put confidence in God. My soul puts confidence, and I hope for his word. I yearn for my Lord among those longing for the dawn, those longing for the dawn. Let Israel hope for God, for with God is kindness, and with him is abundant redemption. And he shall redeem Israel from all of their difficulties. Our dear Phil has a lot of connections to a lot of different places. And his dear family had a lot of things to share and that wanted you to hear today. But at the same time, we wanted you to know what a simple, good person he was. He was simple in his goodness and good in his simplicity. So we'll share a little bit about his life and his accomplishments and who he was. But keep in mind all the while that the main thing that he did so beautifully was just be himself, his special, simple, good self. So our beloved Phil, in Hebrew, he was called Feivel ben Shmuel. His parents, Shmuel and Ida. He was born in Cleveland, in the historically Jewish neighborhood called Kinsman. to traditional Jewish parents. In his early years, he went to the local Talmud Torah, and then he went later on to public school. He graduated high school, and in those years, World War II was in full swing, and he would proudly serve his country in World War II as a part of the United States Army. He was sent to the Pacific, and he served specifically in the Philippines. And I don't have the exact understanding of all of his service, but it would seem, based upon the time, that the attack on Pearl Harbor was December 1941. And maybe he was sent to the Philippines a little bit before that in anticipation of an attack of the Japanese to that particular island. The U.S. Army was involved in fortifying it and getting ready for such attack. And then such an attack did indeed occur simultaneous with Pearl Harbor, that the troops in the Philippines were attacked as well. Not only did he serve in the army, but his brother as well served honorably. And one of the family members mentioned that even in his family photo, you could see an injury that might have been related to something he did in the service of his country. Phil met his beloved Edith, a very special woman. On the surface in those days, when you're making a Jewish match, you kind of match up according to the countries you come from. And they weren't such a perfect match, because he was a Litvak, he's a Lithuanian Jew. Quite organized, quite orderly, quite straight, following all the rules. And she came from a community of her parents came from Marmarash, the Carpathian Mountains. A little bit Hasidic, a little bit, more diverse in their world perspectives and how they did things. But nevertheless, they made it a good match, despite the different geographically origins of their parents. And they were set out to do a lot of good things, to raise a good Jewish family, to raise good kids, and to see them happy and to see them successful. They were married by the very well-known rabbi of Taylor Road Synagogue, which is just across the street, the well-known Rabbi Engelberg. So they had 2 children. They had Paula of blessed memory, whose soul, her memory should have a blessing, and we think of today in her presence, and we think of also our beloved Sheldon, who's over here as well, his son. So the 2 of them, Edith and Sheldon, their one goal in life, if you were to ask them, was to make sure their children had every opportunity in life. No matter what, their children had to be able to succeed and have the best education and have the career that they always wanted and they always dreamed of. And how was this possible? They together owned a restaurant. And to be able to have a restaurant and be able to take home enough to take care of your family in the way that they wanted, it took a lot of hard work. So Edith and Phil partnered up. During the day, Edith was working part of the day shift, and Phil took care of the remaining shifts, part of the night shift and part of the morning shift. And the family recalled how every night or every morning, he would come home at 3:30 a.m. from a long day working at the restaurant. He didn't sleep a long time because he didn't want to miss the breakfast with the family altogether. He spent a little bit of time with the family at the breakfast, but then everyone had to go to school, everyone had to go to their respective places, and as a result, they didn't really see so much. The 2 parents, Edith and Phil didn't see each other as much, and they didn't see so much of the kids, but they made it work because, again, the goal was so clear, to make sure that the kids had everything that they wanted to have. And the dream that the 2 of them had was fulfilled when they saw Paula of blessed memory attend school to become a social worker, and they also saw their dream fulfilled in having a son, a doctor, Sheldon, being able to, do all the things that they certainly dreamed about. And because family was so important, it wasn't just the kids, it wasn't just the local family, but it was an extension. The whole family was important to Phil and to Edith. And in particular, Phil made sure that he had a close connection with Edith's sister, and with her own children. So for many years, he tried to bring them to family events. He was always there for them. He also played a key role in helping to raise the kids as well. So if anyone's here from the Tolshinsky family, is that who you guys are? Okay, so it's very important to the family and very important for your family to know how much you meant to him and what an honor it was that he had in having a connection and helping to raise you guys to who you are today. And it wasn't just about him having the connections, but it was about the hub. And the idea that their home was the hub for the family. If there was a family event, a dinner, a get-together, a special occasion, it had to happen at Phil and Edith's house, and that was the center. And they made possible a lot of beautiful occasions, a lot of celebrations, and a lot of holidays. And obviously it meant the world to them that their own house was where it all happens. In a sense, like we said in the beginning, that he was just a simple, good person. Maybe he wouldn't want all the rabbi talking that's taking place right now. And if he wouldn't have wanted it, I apologize in a sincere way. But one of the things about him that wasn't so simple was that he was a real businessman, true and true. He ran the restaurants, he was good with people, but he was a man whose mind was very focused, very organized, and very business-wise. And a story that Rebecca told me was that I guess she approached him, she said, I never really learned how to do budgeting, I never really learned how to do all these things. And he proudly took her under his, in his wing. And he said, in order to be successful, you have to first, every single expense you make for the next 6 months, you have to write down in a book. And probably she said, well, if I get a soda from the gas station, do I have to write down that I got a 65-cent soda? He said, of course, there's no other way. And so that was just his personality. And so he applied this personality not only to helping family members, but he had a very successful stock club. And I don't know if he was a stock guru, but just simply his organization, his smarts, his intelligence, and his wit, his wisdom made that a success as well. Because of his experience in the war, in all the things that he did for the United States Army, it was very important to the both of them to take care of the local veterans. And wherever they were, whatever cities they were living in, they were very involved with the local Jewish War Veterans chapter. And so not only was it the local involvement, but Edith was even the president of the Jewish War Veterans organization of the entire state of Ohio. And so, I don't imagine it was a very light task. If you're involved in the Jewish War Veterans, from what I've heard about it, they're always doing stuff. They have conventions, they have meetings, and they're doing a lot of kindnesses. They're visiting people at the VA, they're helping people with financials, right? They're doing all kinds of things, and this was something that Phil and Edith, took the time to make sure that they did as much as possible to honor fellow veterans like themselves. So they spent a good deal of time in Ohio, in University Heights, and a little bit in some time in Cincinnati, and they also summered in Florida. And they enjoyed all the back and forths. But one of the best blessings that they had was a state in America called Arizona. They were able to come to he was able to come to Arizona. Sheldon and the family found him a nice independent living, and just be able to spend time with the kids and the grandkids. The kid and the grandkids was so dear to him, and I guess maybe all of Sheldon's kids weren't quite there, and over the years they moved to Tucson or moved to Arizona, and it was just such nachas for him, such joy to be able to see you guys and to live so close by. The thing about him was that when it came to being a grandfather or a great-grandfather, he didn't look at it as a light matter, right? You couldn't say, well, I'm 80 or 90, I'm a little old, I don't take planes anymore, I don't go on long trips anymore, that's a little too far. So he didn't have that in his vocabulary. So basically whatever event you guys and your children had, he made a point of being there. And he, as we discussed, he loved to celebrate achievements, educational achievements, religious achievements. It meant so much to him. And so I heard quite a few different stories. I heard stories that, different graduations across the country, they would get on planes, even until he was late 90s, he wouldn't hesitate to go on an airplane and come see his children. I heard stories that, he wanted to make sure that his kids could eat by him and he made sure that the kitchen was kosher, so that whoever was kosher could come and eat by him, and they felt very comfortable. And even I heard a story, I don't remember the name, but one of his great-grandchildren was here locally in the Mesivta High School, and he broke his legs, and who was the one that he went to get care? He went to his, great-grandpa. Great-grandpa took care of the young guy, after his particular injury. So, it didn't matter, again, his age. Whatever his heart wanted him to do, he didn't let age stop, and he was there for his children and his grandchildren very much. But one of the reasons, that he was able to be the jet-setter great-grandfather that he was because of his own will, was because of his lovely family, but was because of a certain lady, that made it very possible. So a very special lady is mentioned, his good friend Lita Schwartz. And so Lita and him, both had their spouses. They were together in the same independent living complex, I believe. And the two couples were friends. They had a connection. But they both ended up losing both of their spouses. And so it became a nice thing for both of them, after losing both of their respective spouses, that they would stay connected and they would support each other. And that's what they did. They never lost touch. They never lost a recognition of their first spouses and how special and dear they were to them. But they also were pragmatic and practical, and they took care of each other in difficult times. And so Lita was the reason why he was able to be so mobile. She got him to the family events. She made sure that he was well cared for. She made sure his health was in good order. And she always really was the woman behind the man, making him look good. And when he showed up, on a family visit at 99 years old, he looked good, and he was healthy. He had all his meds. He had all the transportation worked out, thanks to the goodwill and the help of Lita. So we're very thankful to her, and she couldn't be with us here today, but I think she's watching us, and we just, on behalf of the family, offer her a very special thanks. So, in concluding, there's so much to say, but there's also so much not to say. So I think Phil would just want you to know that he appreciated everyone in his life. His family, his friends, they meant the world to him. And he would want to thank you. Thank you for being who you were. Thank you for giving an opportunity to have nachas and to have simchas and to have joy. And in turn, we say back to him, thank you for being a great father, great grandfather, great uncle, great friend, great veteran, great person to serve our country and to take care of business. So anyways, we pray together that his memory should be for a blessing, and we should always learn from his good ways, and we should emulate his ways, and we should be more like him as much as possible. So we have a casual crowd, so we didn't want to leave anyone out. So if anyone wanted to speak or share a few words, I welcome you to do so. So one of his casual.
So I'm not really a good public speaker, so I do everything off the cuff. Nothing is prepared. So bear with me. So I don't know. I couldn't have even written something as long as the story of Grandpa. 101 years, active until he was 100, even active until he was as recent as, a few weeks ago. I mean, I'd speak to him at least once a week. He'd always ask me how many sales I made, how much money I made, how's business. Literally, and even until, I think the last time I spoke to him, he wasn't so well, but the time before that was like maybe a week prior to that when Sheldon and Polly went to go visit him, and he put him on the phone and wanted to know how many sales I made that week, even though he was like not well at that point. It was very important to him to know that I was doing well. And it was very important to him to know that all of you were doing well. Family to him and to my grandmother were the most important thing. And that's what I learned from him. And I think that we should all be so lucky to have a long life like he did. And not only that, a long life where he was extremely active until the end. You hear about people living a long time but not doing well for the last 10 years. It was not the case with him. He was very active, and I think part of it is that we were all in touch with him. I know that a lot of the cousins would go see him, and I was the one that broke my leg, by the way, in yeshiva when I was here. And I did go to them, and I lived with them. I think I might be their only grandchild that lived with them, and they treated me like I was their own kid. I think I stayed in Sheldon's room, actually. They treated me just like I was, for better or worse. I got yelled at sometimes when I told them I had some credit card debt. I got, but he taught me how to be a businessman, and he explained to me what I needed to do to be aggressive, go-getter. I wasn't like that until he really got into me. It didn't sink in until, later in my life, but ever since I followed his advice about everything, we're talking, he would literally want to know details. How many cars did you sell this month? How much did you make? I was constantly in touch with him, and thankfully my family got to go visit him 3 or 4 times when he was out in Arizona. He'd come visit us. It was just a blessing to be able to have him in our lives, and a blessing to be able to share my children with him, and he had a lot of nachas from them. And, I think that we should all learn a lesson from him that it's mainly about family. Everything that we do in our life as individuals is individual, but the bigger picture was always family. Everyone here cherished Uncle Phil. He was grandpa to me, but he basically treated us all like we were his kids. And that's really how it was, and I think we all need to take that away from that and celebrate his life, because 101 years is incredible. Every one of those years, he spent caring about us first. And I think that, his neshama should have an aliyah, and he's with grandma and with my mother now, and they should all celebrate together and look down upon us and joy that we have for the life that he had. Thank you.
When my dad was born, his name was Meyer. It was not Phillip, and I don't know if you know this story, Bobby. But, and I just found out a few years ago when my dad was 98, we're at the dinner table. he said, you know, when I was born, my parents named me Meyer. And when they did that, my Aunt Rose, who must have been 7 or 8 at the time, said, no, you can't name him Meyer. Kids will tease him at school. So they went back and they had his name changed, which, you know, had to be very difficult to do at a courthouse if you just speak Yiddish. And they changed it to Phillip. I didn't know that at all until, you know, a few years ago. And sure enough, going through his papers this last week, I saw his birth certificate where it says Meyer on the birth certificate. As it turned out, that wasn't the last time he changed his name. They did it again some years later. You know, his childhood was spent in poverty. During the Depression, it was even worse. You know, he graduated high school, and within months found himself in the Army Air Corps, where he served on 7 different islands in the South Pacific. Got an honorable discharge. We all know the rest of the story. You know, the 1940s, he fell in love with my mother, Edith, and they got married in the 50s. My sister Paula was born, and 3.5 years later I was born. And he was proud of both of us. And, you know, the 60s, the bars, the strip clubs led to an interesting childhood for me and my sister. And retirement at the age of 56. He had a heart attack at 52. This is before there was cardiac catheterizations. This is before there were bypass surgeries. And it was like a death sentence. And he had a partner shot and killed at work. He retired himself at the age of 56. And who knew it would be a 45-year retirement, you know? But he spent more time retired than he ever worked, and he made it work and led a pretty happy life, you know, great life. And I got to say, the first 100 years were terrific. The second 100 years, not so much, you know. But he did very well, and was tremendous pleasure to me and my wife and my children. And when we moved to Arizona in 2004, we moved my parents out so that we could look after them. We're grateful for the 89 years my mother lived. And we're also grateful, within a year, he met Lita Schwartz and had a very good life with her afterward. You know, my father, when taking care of my mother with a very long, drawn-out Alzheimer's disease, was a mensch, stood up to the plate, took care of her until he just physically couldn't do it anymore. And but did what he was supposed to do. And there was never a question in his mind that he needed to do what he's supposed to do. And I guess the lessons we learn from his life are that, as Josh said, family is everything. You know, going through my dad's possessions, you could put it all in a cardboard box. He really never owned anything that he thought much of, but he thought everything of all the people here and all of his family, and he'd do anything for you. And he'd give you anything that you needed and help you get through life, and that's what was important to him. So, and these are, you know, he never regretted any good deed that he did for anybody. You know, it was always you go forward and you look for the next good deed to do. So, that's all.
Yeah, I'm not a big speaker as well. I'm Nathan. I was one of the grandchildren. My Sheldon family that's here. You know, my memories of Grandpa, you know, were a little different than you know, what my brother had spoken on. We were, you know, in communication frequently. I remember speaking to him, actually being around him 9 months ago, him and Lita, and you know, like everybody spoke before me, you know, he's a wonderful person. He served our country. We have some family photos at home, you know, that kind of reflect that. And yeah, I'm always gonna miss my grandfather and my mother that had passed, his daughter, and yeah, he lived a long life, and he was kind of, when we spoke, similar questions, just different scenarios, than what my brother would share about. Some similarities, but yeah, I loved my grandfather and my grandmother before she became Nifter, before she passed away, and I'll always love both of them, and always be a memory in my life that I hope I never forget, and I can pass along the good things that Grandpa did teach me. I'm the youngest of the three siblings, so of the grandchildren, so I was kind of at the latter end of, getting to know Grandpa, but I'll never forget him, and I love everybody in this room that showed up. It looks like most of it is family or, some connection of another, and thanks for letting me speak and share something. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much to the family for their beautiful words. Just following today's service, we're going to go in procession to the cemetery, which is called the Zion Memorial, just on Northfield Road. And if people are so inclined, they don't have to give charity to anywhere, but the family did identify the Zaka charity, which is the rescue mission that takes place in Israel, which does emergency rescues and handles very difficult situations over there. At this moment, I'm going to ask everyone to please rise. We're going to rise and we're going to share together the memorial prayer, the Kel Mali Rachamim prayer. And then after that prayer is recited, we're going to remain standing, and then we're going to have the pallbearers come forth, and the pallbearers will walk with the casket, walk with Phil out the chapel. Not everyone has to stand if it's hard to stand. The pallbearers are going to walk first, then with the family behind the casket, and then after the family has gone outside the back door, then everyone else will file in behind that procession. We'll go to our cars, and we'll drive in procession to the cemetery. And at the cemetery, we'll do the final prayers, and we'll also conclude with Kaddish over there at the cemetery. So even though he was mayor, his Hebrew name was Feivel, right? Okay. I didn't want to miss a change in the Hebrew name, but I figured that wouldn't change. Okay. El Mali Rachamim, Sheikhein Bam Romim, Hamsei Menocha Nechain Al Kanfei Hashchina, Memalois Kedoshim Utaharim, Gezarakia Mazirim, Es Nishmas, Feivel Ben Shmuel, Shahalach Leilamo, Bavor Shanachtu Mispalim Haskaras Nishmaso, Began Eden Te Menochaso, Lachain Bal Harachamim, Yastirechu Beseisik Anafav Leolamim, Beitzor Betzor Chayim Es Nishmaso, Adonai hu nachlaso, v'yanoach al mishkavo b'shalom, v'nomar Amen. O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the soul of our most beloved Feivel, the son of Shmuel and Ida, who's gone into his world, and for whom we pray. May his resting place be in the Garden of Eden, and may the Master of Mercy shelter him in the shelter of his wings for all eternity, and may he bind his soul in the bonds of life. God is his heritage, and may he repose in peace on his resting place. And now we say together, Amen. So, like I said, we're going to grab our things, our coats, whatnot, and then the pallbearers, if they could come forward, and we'll begin the procession out of the chapel. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, we're going to go with that.
Follow me, yes. get to the rear of the chapel, you turn to the right. The interment will be at Zion Memorial Park. We ask those who are going to that service, please return directly to your cars. Put on your headlights and your hazard flashes. Thank you.